Recording. We'll start with the Mangala Charan prayers. Om Jnanam Timirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadammayam Dati Svapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavangsha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitangsha He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So today we will be discussing the 64 limbs of devotional practice. So we have seen the purity of devotional service. We've spoken about the nature of devotional service. We've spoken about the eligibility of devotional service, the definition of devotional service. Now, Rupa Goswami discusses how is devotional service actually practiced? What is devotional service? So, who is eligible, the definition of it, but now actually how do we practice it? And this is something actually very special because in the world's religions, like for example, Lord Jesus Christ, he says, love the Lord with all your heart, mind, and soul. In the world's religions, this message is there, which is love God, serve God, love God with all your heart, mind, and soul. But then what is not so explicitly mentioned very often is exactly how do you do that? How do we love God? Some people say, well, we love God by loving our neighbor. We love God by, offering prayers to God. But these things are good, but exactly how do we relate with God also? How do we actually serve God? How do we serve Krishna? So that is being described here by Rupa Goswami. And he describes 64 items that we can, by which we can serve him. Now, we may feel that, wow, 64 is just too much, 64 items. But actually, when we go through these, we'll see it's not so difficult. It's not so different. The 64 items of bhakti are actually very much what we do on a daily basis, especially the ones of primary importance. So these 64 items are divided into different parts. The first 20 are described as the most important. And of the first 20, there are 10 that are rules, things to do. So we talked about this before also in the definition of devotional service. In the definition of bhakti, we have things that should be done and things that should not be done. So Rupa Goswami said that there's only one rule and one regulation. Who remembers what is that one rule and what is that one regulation?
Always remember Krishna, never forget Krishna.
Never forget Krishna.
And never forget Krishna. So the rule is always remember Krishna. This is something we need to do. And the regulation is never forget Krishna. This is something that we should not do. Don't, meaning that's forgetting Krishna is something that we should not do. So all these 64 items of bhakti, Rupa Goswami has summarized in that one rule and regulation. So that one rule and regulation is now expanding to these 64 rules and regulations. Of these 64, the first expands to the 20, and then the 20 further expands to the 64. So the 20, the first 10 are things that we should do. The second 10 are nivritti, pravritti. This is supposed to be an R. The fonts didn't come out right. So this is pravritti, things to do, and nivritti, things not to be done. And then above and beyond that, there are 44 additional items of service. 21 to 59 are items of sadhana. And the last five, now I just told you these are the most important, but actually the last five are described as the most potent. So you think, well, how is this possible? Well, these five are actually repetitions, we'll see. They've been repeated again. They're so important. They're so potent that these are present in the first 20 and then they're repeated again in the last five. Now, these last five are the most potent, but the first three, now among the 20, the first three are the most important. And I will review this again with you at the end. So don't worry if you didn't catch that. Just know this table and know that the first three are the most important and the last five are the most potent. Important and potent. So the first one, which is the most important principle of sadhana bhakti? Well, you could have guessed it. Accepting the shelter of the lotus feet of a bona fide spiritual master. So many people in other processes of bhakti, they say you can do bhakti, but there's no need for a spiritual master, or we can just do it the way we want. But this is the most important principle, accepting the shelter of the lotus feet of a bona fide spiritual master. Becoming initiated by the spiritual master and learning how to discharge devotional service from him. So not just accepting him, acceptance can be a sentimental thing, but becoming initiated, taking the formal vows and learning how to discharge, actually learning, uh, taking instruction and learning from the spiritual master how to discharge devotional service. And unless we learn practically, there's no way to actually perform. And we see that every one of our acharyas and the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna himself, has showed this by their own personal example. Although they're nitya siddhas, although they're self-realized beings who could have easily served Krishna, just spontaneously, and knowledge could be revealed in their heart to show the world and also for themselves, they accepted a spiritual master. There's no going to Krishna without the spiritual master. There's no meaning to spiritual life without a spiritual master. And Srila Prabhupada says that the acceptance of the spiritual master is actually not the yajna that takes place. It's not actually the ritual of initiation. Initiation means, or acceptance of the spiritual master happens when the disciple firmly accepts the spiritual master in their heart and when the spiritual master accepts the disciple. So, and especially on the disciple side, that the disciple, when the disciple takes that devotee as their guide and accepts them in their heart, that is the principle, that is the time of initiation. And we see this many times in many different devotees' lives, that my own grandfather, when he passed away, my grandmother was initiated, but he was not. But it was very interesting that, a few months before he passed away, he accepted um, he accepted uh, the spiritual master. He accepted, and he said, he's my spiritual master. And very seriously, and all was following the principles, all these things. The actual initiation did not take place, but the acceptance was there. So of course, initiation means from both sides it has to be approved. But my point is that it has to be it's a connection of the spiritual master and the disciple that signifies the initiation from both sides. It is not simply the yajna. So if a disciple, for example, is very elderly and they accept the spiritual master, and the spiritual master has accepted them, and is there's a connection there, then even if the actual fire sacrifice does not take place, we can consider that person as initiated. So um, so then what is then the meaning of the yajna? Why then do we do the yajna? If Srila Prabhupada is saying that initiation is not just the yajna, but is the acceptance of the spiritual master, what is the purpose? So Prabhupada says that the initiation ceremony is a formality, but it is not a meaningless formality. When we get initiation, that is a formality. And Prabhupada gives the example of marriage. When husband, wife, when two people, they come together and they get married, they do the marriage ceremony, they take some nice pictures and all these things, but it's just a formality. However, it is not a meaningless formality. When the marriage ceremony happens, then both the husband and wife promise one another to stay together for the rest of their life, to in heaven or hell, not to not part. So by doing that formality, one is making a statement to the other person, and to God, and to the priest, and to the audience, and to the everyone there is making a statement that I commit myself to certain responsibilities, to certain duties. In the same way, the ceremony of initiation is not the initiation itself. However, it's not the relationship itself. However, at that time, the disciple is accepting the spiritual master and is therefore accepting the Lord formally. And therefore, the Lord says that at that time, the Lord accepts the disciple as good as himself, because one is taking that vow very conscientiously. One is taking responsibilities. And this is why Srila Prabhupada said that if we do sinful activities, if we sin after taking these vows, the reaction is very heavy, is very strong. It's the same sin before, after, but why the reaction is greater? Because there, after this point, one is breaking one's vow. One has taken the vow to do these things, and if one does not follow the principles, does not chant his 16 rounds, then one is breaking something that is not just that should be done, but something that one has vowed to do. And um, it's described that the vows of a devotee are the devotee's wealth. The vows of the devotee are his power, are his purity. So we should not take vows if we want to break them. because that is very detrimental. And if we take vows and we fulfill them, then we make a lot of spiritual advancement. So the devotee's vow is very special. And if a devotee is vowed to do these things in front of the spiritual master, in front of the fire, in front of all the devotees, and then breaks that vow, then um, that is very shameful. That is very unfortunate. There's one place where one disciple asked Srila Prabhupada, he says that some devotees are not chanting their 16 rounds. And Prabhupada says, don't talk to them, don't speak to them. In front of the fire, with the devotees, in the temple, in front of the Lord, they've taken these vows and now they're breaking them. Don't speak to them, don't talk to them. So he was very showing that he took those vows very seriously. On the other hand, Prabhupada also showed his compassion, where if devotees were unable to do it, he also accepted them back. So he was telling that heavy statement for us to make us feel, to make us understand that how serious these vows are for ourselves and how Prabhupada is so displeased if we break them. But for others, we should be very lenient. Lenient meaning that we should not judge them. There's also, for example, a statement where a devotee goes to Srila Prabhupada and says that our temple president is not chanting his 16 rounds. And what should we do, Prabhupada? He's falling. He's a fallen devotee. He's not chanting 16 rounds. And to that, Srila Prabhupada replied, he said, when Arjuna was on the battlefield, did he have time to chant his 16 rounds? Was he chanting his 16 rounds? So, of course, we cannot take advantage of that statement. Even Prabhupada was very clear that even our leaders, they have to chant their 16 rounds. But Srila Prabhupada was showing a different principle there that, well, for ourselves, keep very high standards. But for others, we can, also try to understand their situation. If they're on the battlefield, maybe they might be, in a difficult situation and they're not able to do it. But but then he, of course, told the leaders that they should chant their 16 rounds every day. So these are the vows. So why these are the most important items of devotional service? Because it all starts with this. If you don't have the spiritual master, you won't know how to discharge the remaining 61 principles of sadhana bhakti. And then the third one, the third principle of the most important principles is that, well, accept a spiritual master, take initiation and learn from that spiritual master. But all of that is useless if then we actually don't do it. So then the third one is obey the orders of the spiritual master with faith and devotion. So then fulfill those instructions and do them with faith and devotion. That famous verse is there. Yasya deve para bhakti yatha deve tathagaro tasyaite katitha prakashante mahatma. That for that person who has unflinching faith in the spiritual master and in the scriptures and in the Lord, in the faith in the spiritual master and the Lord, to that person, all the secrets of the scriptures are revealed. So this is actually a great secret. If we follow the spiritual master with faith and devotion, then actually the purport, the essence of the scriptures will be revealed to us. It will be revealed in our heart. We'll keep reading and reading, but we will only understand if we get the mercy, the sincere mercy of the spiritual master. So Prabhupada actually said something very nice in this. He said, so many people, they go to the Guru, blessings, blessings, please give me blessings. Or Guru Maharaj, I've come here to see your darshan and receive your blessings. So Prabhupada says the Guru gives the blessings. And the Guru appreciates when the disciple asks for blessings and visits and offers obeisances to the Guru. And the Guru will give blessings. But when the spiritual master gives heartfelt blessings, when the spiritual master gives blessings because the spiritual master wants to, upon seeing the disciples' sincere service, sincere practice of the holy name, then those blessings are very powerful. So one has to try to get the sincere blessings of the spiritual master, not just by trickery, but the sincere. And this picture here is actually um, very significant, because these were actually two devotees that Srila Prabhupada gave his very sincere blessings to. One on the left side, here you see Vishnu Jan Maharaj. And Vishnu Jan Maharaj, his quality was that he was constantly chanting the holy name. Like he would sleep 3 or 4 hours a day. He would be up all night chanting. Then during the day, he would be doing Harinam from morning to night. He was on the Radha Damodar party with His Holiness Tamal Krishna Maharaj. And it's described that he was always chanting. Like we go on Harinam like 2 or 3 hours a week. The temple organizes it, and we all go on Saturday and we go on Harinam and we think, wow, we did a big feat. But he would go on Harinam 8 to 10 hours a day. That was what he did, 8 to 10 hours a day, just chanting, day and night chanting. And Vishnujan Maharaj was very famous for his singing. Prabhupada loved his singing. If Prabhupada was there somewhere and Vishnujan Maharaj was there, Srila Prabhupada would always ask Vishnujan Maharaj to sing. So he was always chanting. Srila Prabhupada knew that he was obeying his orders to chant the holy name. He was actually a genuine Vaishnava and very powerful devotee. And so when Srila Prabhupada would meet Vishnujan Maharaj, there's such a devotees described that there was such a intense exchange of love. Prabhupada would just have so much feeling and love for Vishnujan Maharaj, because he knew that he was obeying the orders of the spiritual master with faith and devotion. He was, completely absorbed in the holy name, and this is what Srila Prabhupada wanted of his disciples. He had dedicated life, mind, body, and words to the spiritual master and to Krishna to propagate the holy name. A almost complete opposite personality in terms of their nature was Tamal Krishna Maharaj, where Tamal Krishna Maharaj was very, very attached to the holy name. Of course, that was very common amongst them. But unlike his service, Tamal Krishna Maharaj was continuously engaged in management. Tamal Krishna Maharaj was actually the son of like a minister, like a family of politicians and statesmen, and kind of like he came from a very aristocratic family. So he knew how to do these things, even materially speaking. He had a very fine intelligence, very fine words, very good speaker. And so Srila Prabhupada continuously engaged him in the most difficult tasks related with managing his society. So Tamal Krishna Maharaj was continuously engaged in management under Srila Prabhupada's order. And he would just manage and manage and manage. It's funny, Vishnujan Maharaj could not manage anything. He was just like a avadhut, where if he had $5, he would give it away. Um, and Tamal Krishna Maharaj, he was managing the whole Radha Damodar party, and Vishnujan Maharaj was like the inspiration. He was preaching and inspiring everyone by his chanting. So, um, so Tamal Krishna Maharaj was managing day and night, and so apparently, his service was not so, you could say, so you know, uh, it was more, you could say, in touch with the material elements, so to say. He had to manage and call the banks and all these things. But then when he met Prabhupada after some period of distance meaning separation, he was managing the Radha party, and he came and then he met Srila Prabhupada. Then Srila Prabhupada embraced him, and tears were coming down Srila Prabhupada's eyes. And he told Tamal Krishna Maharaj, he said, "You are Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur's best grand disciple." Now, of course, as we've seen in spiritual life, many things can be best. So many devotees can be best. So Prabhupada had many of his disciples that he considered to be his best disciples. But in the case of Tamal Krishna Maharaj, he clearly said that, and he embraced him with tears coming down his eyes. So that is real blessings, when the spiritual master is thinking of the disciple. And another example is Bhurijan Prabhu. He was a Grahastha disciple, and he and his wife went to, I think, maybe Kuwait or somewhere really difficult to preach. And they didn't have food to eat, they had no place to stay. They're chanting on the streets. And one time, Srila Prabhupada, in his heart, he knew he was, I mean, he could see things. He was very powerful. So Srila Prabhupada was in New York, somewhere else, and he began to, tears were coming down his eyes. And the devotees asked, "Why you are crying, Srila Prabhupada?" And he said, "My disciple Bhurijan, he is struggling so much for me." So, sannyasi or householder or brahmachari, one can please the spiritual master and earn the genuine blessings of that spiritual master. So these were the most potent. Actually, the first five all deal, most important, the first five all deal with the spiritual master. Number four is following in the footsteps of the great acharyas under the direction of the spiritual master. So we should follow in the footsteps of the great acharyas. This is not fanaticism. This is all connected under the direction of the spiritual master. So we have to follow, not jump over the spiritual master, also not see our spiritual master as the one all be all, and neglect the other devotees, other parampara. But we must follow in the footsteps of the great acharyas under the direction of the spiritual master. So there's no fanaticism or there's no stepping over the spiritual master. But the understanding is there that Prabhupada, our spiritual master, uh, and Srila Prabhupada, and they're all in the line of parampara. So this whole parampara is giving us wisdom. They're giving us spiritual knowledge. And so Bhaktivinoda Thakur has given us books. And these are all books meant for us. We can read them, but we read them through the lens of Srila Prabhupada's mercy and the Guru's mercy. And the fifth one, inquiring from the spiritual master how to advance in Krishna consciousness. So not just that we should take initiation like number two here, or and learn from the spiritual master, or the spiritual master teaches us, but we should actively inquire from the spiritual master. So the nice example of this is Arjuna, that Krishna wants him to fight, but Arjuna could just have obeyed. Arjuna could just have learned from Krishna how to fight and obeyed. But Arjuna inquired, Arjuna clarified his doubts. So, as disciples, we are supposed to clarify our doubts. We are supposed to ask questions from the spiritual master. We are not expected, nor should we, follow blindly. And Arjuna gives this example. Even in the Gita, Krishna says what? Pari prashnena sevya. Ask questions and serve. Questioning does not mean that we are proud. We should not question in a proud way, but we should question. We should ask questions. We should clarify our doubts. That is the duty of a spiritual master. Because only then, unless we are convinced, once we are convinced, only then we will be able to give our heart and soul to Krishna. So these first five were all in relation to the spiritual master, the first five. So just remember this and remember these first five. Now, number six, remember this is part of all the do's. The first 10 are the do's. Being prepared to give up anything material for the satisfaction of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So give up anything material for the satisfaction of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Here I have a picture of Srila Prabhupada in front of the Jaladuta. Why is this a very apt example? Because Srila Prabhupada actually says that he did not want to take sannyas. He is very happy in his family, with his family. But his spiritual master asked him to. He came in Srila Prabhupada's dreams regularly and told him, you leave, you go, you go. And Prabhupada then, following this principle, he gave it up for the satisfaction of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Then he gave up his family and he came to Vrindavan, to the Radha Damodar temple, as a sadhu, fully dedicated. And there he was comfortably situated in the Radha Damodar temple. He had renounced everything, which was very difficult to do. But then he was a full servant, in the dham, writing books, fulfilling the instruction of his guru to translate books. But then that was even not enough. That situation, Krishna asked him to give that up also. Then his spiritual master comes to him and says, now you go to the Western world, you go and preach in America. So Srila Prabhupada, at the age of 70, he gave up his comfortable position in Vrindavan Dham. He gave up his position at the feet of the Lord in Vrindavan Dham to go and fulfill the will of the Lord, for the satisfaction of the Lord. He then gave up even his good health. He accepted all the difficulties and accepted the difficulties to his health that this voyage would take him, would make him experience. And he went on a ship and he had so many heart attacks. And when he arrived to America, there in the middle of winter, amongst a bunch of hippies who did not know how to serve or respect him, he began serving the Lord. He was preaching the Lord, the glories of the Lord. So, this is the sixth principle. These are easy to read, but very difficult to um, fulfill. So, as devotees, we should be prepared to give up anything material for the satisfaction of Krishna. Now, this one almost seems in contradiction of the previous one. I just mentioned how Srila Prabhupada left Vrindavan Dham to satisfy the Supreme Lord. And now, here it's being said, residing in a sacred place of pilgrimage like Dwaraka or Vrindavan. So, of course, if the Lord and the spiritual master want us to go elsewhere, the disciple will go anywhere where they want, including the hellish planets. But under normal, unless instructed otherwise, the devotee naturally desires to reside in the place of pilgrimage. So, the city life does affect us. The modes of nature around us do affect us. So, a principle of bhakti is to reside in a sacred place. Now, Prabhupada explains that because of this nature of this Kali Yuga, where it's so difficult to leave our situations and go to the Dham, Srila Prabhupada has established Dhams all over the world. And he has said that every single one of his centers, every single one of his temples is a place of pilgrimage. So if we cannot live in Vrindavan or Dwarka or Mayapur or these places, then we should live close to the temple. And living close to the temple does not mean that we live close to the temple and we go there every Sunday only. Living in a place of pilgrimage means that we visit the temple and we take advantage of that association, of that atmosphere. It's so true. It's so amazing. You'll see so many of the principles of sadhana bhakti. Like out of the 64 principles, maybe 20 of them are all related to the deity and the temple. You'll see as we go through them. It's so important that the temple is so key in the practice of sadhana bhakti. I actually just had this experience with my daughter, Sita. She's 3 years old. And at home, we have our deities and we do our morning program every morning. And since many weeks, I've been trying to get her to sing when we also sing the morning program because she likes singing these songs. But she's that age, she won't sing. Like, we'll do the artik and she loves doing artik. So like she'll do the incense, but she won't sing along. She won't chant. So I was thinking, what to do. Like, why is she not singing? And then we took her to the temple, and then we, as I mentioned, we just moved to Naperville, so we took her to the temple, and then we were doing the same program there, the same Nishinga prayers, the same artik, and at the temple, then she was singing, and she was singing loudly. She just automatically was singing. So children also, they learn from their atmosphere. So at home, the process is there, the deities are there, but that atmosphere is not there. But when we're residing in a sacred place, or when we go to a sacred place, like the holy place, like the temple, then they see others doing it. And when they see others doing it, then they automatically start doing it. Similarly, we see other people that look at their dedication, look at their submission to the Lord, look at their renunciation. And by seeing their renunciation, by their association we automatically become very inspired to serve Krishna. In fact, Prabhupada has said that actually, to get the feelings of wanting to serve Krishna spontaneously, we actually have to reside in Vrindavan Dham. We have to live in Vrindavan Dham. Otherwise, our consciousness will still stay very materialistic. Again, we cannot go. I myself, I'm saying this, but I'm sitting in Chicago, one of the most fallen cities in the world, right? So what is our recourse? Our recourse are these temples, are these spiritual oases that Prabhupada has established, these spiritual embassies. By these, places, we can get that mercy. For fortunate, the visiting devotees, the local devotees, the advanced devotees who we have, by their association, we can get that same benefit. So, this principle is accepting only what is necessary, or dealing with the material world only as far as necessary. Right? So, this is actually a very nice principle. We can follow this principle in our day to day life that, sometimes it's hard to decide, should I get this or should I not? How much is too much? So, we just accept what is necessary. Okay, um, you know, um, uh, if if we need something, just for our practice of Krishna consciousness, for our lively, just to live, then we can accept that. But if the color of our countertops is not so perfect, or we don't have to get new countertops. We don't have to get all the we just what is necessary. The devotee is satisfied. I have what I need. It's going nicely. Material life is fine. Now let me spend my additional time in serving Krishna. So here we see this beautiful painting. This is showing, uh, I believe this is Raghunath Das Goswami. I forget, but I think it's Raghunath Das Goswami. He was not even interested in making a hermitage for himself. So he would start chanting. And according to advancement, what we need also changes. So he would just chant and chant and chant and chant day and night. And then it became extremely hot, so hot that, like in Govardhan, it gets so hot that it becomes like 140 degrees Fahrenheit. Like it's the hottest. Actually, Govardhan, it came in National Geographic. It's the hottest inhabited place in the world. So there are some places that are hotter, like Sahara Desert, but the hottest place where people live in the world is Govardhan. It gets so hot there. So Krishna does this to test who really wants to stay there. And so even the locals during the summer, they'll leave Govardhan and they'll come back during the kind of after the summer season. So Raghunath Das Goswami, he was so spiritual, he would stay all year long. And so at that time it was burning hot, but he still would not put a hermit, make a little tent for himself. So Shrimati Radharani, she herself personally came and she covered his head and, um, to save him from the hot sunlight. And then it so happened that one of the other Goswamis, I think it was Rupa Goswami, saw this. He saw that Shrimati Radharani is coming, and with her own palla, she's shading. And so he then tells Raghunath Das Goswami that go and make a hermitage yourself. Don't don't allow Shrimati Radharani to serve you. By doing this extreme austerity, you're making her serve you, and this is a great offense. So you go and you make a hermitage for yourself. And then he makes a hermitage just to avoid taking service from Shrimati Radharani. So one of the principles of bhakti is accept only what is necessary, or deal with the material world only as far as necessary. Don't get too involved in the material world. Observing the fasting day on Ekadashi. This seems like, okay, it's just fasting, but this is one of the very key important principles of bhakti. Lord Chaitanya himself actually uh, specifies this as one of the very, I didn't know why, but I actually don't know, but Lord Chaitanya decided that this is one of the very core principles of our bhakti. He even asks his own mother, he says, please follow Ekadashi. It's there in the Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita. And there's a very special story in this regard where, I'm going very slowly. I'm sorry. Hopefully, it'll speed up now. That when His Holiness Jayapataka Maharaj, when he was in ICU, as you may know, he was in ICU for like 2 or 3 months when he had the coma, he had the coma, and he was in the ICU, and it was Ekadashi day. This is a true story. Is Ekadashi day. He's in the ICU, the intensive care unit in the hospital, and they were giving him the drip line, which is like in the most basic thing that patient has to have. And His Holiness Jayapataka Maharaj, he called the nurse, and he could not speak. He had all these things, but somehow he communicated to the devotees. So they had a way through letters. He would, maybe move his finger, or somehow he would communicate. He communicated to them. He said that this drip, it has non-Ekadashi substance in it. So today is Ekadashi. Please remove the drip or change the drip because today is Ekadashi. So imagine he's in the ICU, and he's in the intensive care unit, but so keen on following Ekadashi. So this is one of the 64 items. Whatever it is, don't miss Ekadashi. And if you do, then Prabhupada said very simple, just fast the next day. This is what I heard from many Prabhupada disciples, that during Prabhupada's time, this was the standard. I don't know what technically is correct or not, but this is what they said, um, that Prabhupada said, if you miss an Ekadashi, then just fast the next day. This was Jayapataka Swami. He's a guru, initiating spiritual master in our movement. He has 70,000 disciples. So why is he so spiritually potent? We can see so fixed on following the regulated principles of bhakti. Then number 10, how it is not surprising that this is part of the 10 most important ones. Worshipping sacred trees like tulsi. So worshipping the tulsi plant. Worshipping tulsi is one of the most potent items of devotional service. If we chant and serve tulsi, we chant in front of the tulsi plant. If we serve tulsi, we get pure devotional service. She is the mother of bhakti. She gives bhakti freely. If we serve Tulsi Maharani, wonderful things will happen in our life, and we will get love for Krishna very quickly and very easily. This is the benediction of serving Tulsi. So now we did the do's, and now we're going to do the don'ts. So here we go. No smoking. No, one should rigidly give up the company of non-devotees. So we said here that accepting the company of devotees, right? And the don'ts is the first one. Rupa Goswami says, give up the company of non-devotees. Lord Chaitanya says, asat sadhu sangatyag ye Vaishnav achar. So giving up the association of non-devotees is a primary characteristic of a devotee. If we are in bad association, we will retain bad habits. One should rigidly give up the company of non-devotees. That means bad association. There's one nice story of Srila Prabhupada and Brahmananda Prabhu, who became Brahmananda Swami, but initially he was Brahmananda. So this is before he got initiated. I think his name was Bob, maybe, I think, or something like that. And so Srila Prabhupada, he was one of Srila Prabhupada's first disciples on 26 Second Avenue, first devotees to come. And he was helping Srila Prabhupada a lot. He was like a real practical person. Until the very end, he helped Srila Prabhupada a lot. Prabhupada needed something, he would do it. These were the first few people who came. So Prabhupada loved him very much. And Brahmananda Prabhu was also doing a lot of service. He was chanting, he had given up all bad habits. However, he could not give up the bad habit of smoking. He was still smoking. And so Prabhupada, he came up to Srila Prabhupada, and Prabhupada one time told him, you should get initiation. Why don't you get initiated? And Brahmananda told Prabhupada, he said, Prabhupada, I would like to get initiation, but I cannot give up smoking. So Prabhupada loved him so much. He told him that you get initiated. Why don't you get initiated? And although he was, imagine how new he was if he was smoking, but Prabhupada still wanted him to get initiation. He was ready to give him initiation. But he said, Prabhupada, I cannot because I still am smoking. So Prabhupada said, show me your cigarette. So he took, in his pocket, he took the box out and he took out a cigarette and he gave it to Srila Prabhupada. And Prabhupada held it in his hand between his two fingers. And he said, this little thing, he said, will you let this little thing come in between you and Krishna? This small thing is stopping you. And will you let this small thing come in between you and Krishna? And Brahmananda Prabhu, he recalls, he said at that time he gave up his habit of smoking. So we have these bad habits. These bad habits come from bad company. And so to get Krishna, we just have to give up these bad habits, and giving up the non-devotee association is very helpful. Second principle, one should not instruct a person who is not desirous of accepting devotional service. So this seems very odd. It seems as though, why is Rupa Goswami saying this? We go on the streets, we preach, and we give books to people who don't want to take them because we know that it's good for them. But here it's saying one should not instruct a person who's not desirous. So what we can understand this is that one should not instruct the confidential, or you could say um, the um, the essence of devotional service, you could say I forget, the confidential aspects of devotional service. We should not instruct those to people who are not desirous of accepting them. This is why it's an offense to talk about Rasa Leela in a Sunday class where there's new people, without properly, of course, not always, it can still be there, but to new people, my meaning to be. This is why we don't discuss Rasa Leela. Although it's there in Prabhupada's Krishna book and it's distributed widely, unless one is actually interested in bhakti, we don't go and we tell them about Krishna's intimate pastimes with the gopis. It's there, they can see it if they're interested, but we don't go and tell them those things. Why? Because they're not ready. And they will simply insult, they will simply denigrate these confidential pastimes of the Lord. Krishna's childhood pastimes as a child, all these things. And this is kind of, unfortunately, the whole mood of, modern comics and modern, movies and things like that. That they make a joke, they make fun of Krishna's very advanced confidential pastimes. And here, this is the principle of Rupa Goswami that they're saying, that sahaja means something, when we take something very great and we make it ordinary. So we should instruct people, we should preach to them definitely, but we should instruct them that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. We should tell them that Krishna is God, Krishna is your master. We don't need to focus on his sweet pastimes that are there for the devotees. This is why Prabhupada said that, generally speaking, Bhagavad Gita is the first book for people. Because first of all, they need to understand that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Although Srila Prabhupada wrote Krishna book and published it very first, because Prabhupada felt that it was so important to establish the truth about Krishna. People are misrepresenting Krishna and Rasa Leela and all these things. So for the whole world, he gave that, because we have to make the devotee, we have to do everything. But Prabhupada said that Bhagavad Gita is our most fundamental book. He did say that in different places. So why? Because these people are not ready for devotional service. So they first need to be instructed about the basic greatness of the Lord, the beauty of the Lord, but not maybe his intimacy. Then this one is very interesting. One should not be very enthusiastic about constructing costly temples. So one may feel that, well, Srila Prabhupada established so many beautiful temples. And his one of his main instructions was Mayapur, this unimaginably beautiful temple, the world's greatest, biggest temple. I mean, just the cost, the basic cost of the foundation and things was like $50 million for that temple. So why is this principle here? And if this principle is here, then why did Srila Prabhupada construct costly temples? So in one lecture, these are all very important points, and this is why I'm spending time on them. Please listen carefully. In one lecture, Prabhupada actually clarifies this point. He explains this point. This is not, Prabhupada is not, he actually explains this. He says that the devotee does um, take risk for the Lord, but the devotee takes risk to the Lord to the point that it does not affect or it does not become a disturbance or does not destroy his spiritual advancement, his service to Krishna. So, what does that mean exactly? He gives the example. He says that just like he says, we have purchased this place. He was sitting in a temple at that time. And he says, we have spent money. We have spent a lot of money to get this place. But then he says, but however, we will not go and buy a place that is, $10 million. Why? Because then we will be in so much anxiety, we will not be able to chant Hare Krishna. Day and night, we will think, where will the money come? How to pay the mortgage? How to, maintain this place? So this is the meaning of this principle. That if we make very costly temples, the words here are used very carefully, constructing very costly temples, then the the service which we're supposed to do, we're supposed to construct costly temples, but if it's the point is if it's beyond our means, then the service may be over endeavor, where it's so much that we will actually burn ourselves out. So the example, for example, in the case of Mayapur, right? In Mayapur, Prabhupada gave that instruction, and who did he give that instruction to? He primarily gave that instruction to Alfred Ford, Ambarish Prabhu, the grandson of Alfred Ford. He knew that Ford had the money to do this. He knew that for Alfred Ford, this is not over endeavor. This is a good endeavor. This is something that is of that person's level. It will engage that person's mind. And of course, Amrish Prabhu, he did donate $50 million, which was the seed money, and now devotees around the world. And he made this a whole international project. All the devotees have the responsibility for this temple. All the devotees are donating to it. And so therefore, it's not over endeavor. It's such a big project, but it's happening because it's the one project that Prabhupada gave to the whole society. On the other hand, to other places, Prabhupada constructed not Mayapur temple, but smaller temples. So costly means according to your means costly. So according to the devotees' means, that community's means costly. So for one community, $10 million may not be costly. For another community, $100,000 may be very costly. But the principle is hearing and chanting and serving, right? Hearing, chanting, serving, that has to go on. If we build such a big temple that we cannot hear or chant about Krishna, we have no time. We're just collecting money, and there's no time to hear and chant, then that can become an obstacle in our devotional service. So we should not be ambitious, but rather we should be fully dedicated to the Lord's service. Whatever I have, I give it to Krishna. But then I also am not ambitious that I want to make just temple after temple, and uh, you know, and then I have um, it becomes almost an ego thing. So like sometimes in certain traditions you see all they do is build temples. You go to Swaminarayan temples, there's beautiful temples, and you go inside, and many people, even Swaminarayan practitioners, they've told me this, they say it's a museum. When you go inside, it's like a museum. And they actually tell me, they say that when you come to an ISKCON temple, they say, our temples are more beautiful. This is a true statement that a Swaminarayan follower told me. He said, our temples are more beautiful, but he said, but I must admit that the atmosphere inside your temples, in ISKCON temples, is much better. This was, I was, when I was in England, one person, he came and he told me this. He said, So how do you do it? He said the atmosphere in your temples, inside your temple, is so nice. Why? Because even though the temples are less beautiful, but that atmosphere is so nice, people are attracted. Because why? Because the devotees are singing, doing kirtan, they're hearing and chanting about the Lord. One should not try to read too many books, nor should one develop the idea of earning his livelihood by lecturing on or professionally reciting Bhagavad Gita or Srimad Bhagavatam. So this is a very nice principle for our scholars, whoever our scholars are on this call. Many of us don't even like to read, so this is a non-issue. But those of us who like to read a lot, I myself, I had to, this is a very important principle that I'm glad Rupa Goswami said, because there's this tendency, like you feel obliged, you think, oh, I should read this book, when I should read this book, I should read the books of the acharyas, all of them, I should read this book. But Rupa Goswami here is saying that trying to read too many books is actually an anartha, even if they're spiritual books, and especially material books. We should just read the bare minimum. Then one may wonder, well, what is wrong with that? Why is reading too many books bad? It's interesting, even in Christianity, the Saint Augustine, he says that curiosity is a sin. He says once you have the love of Jesus Christ, once you have, you've been saved, then to keep searching for other things shows that you are not fully dedicated to your process. So Augustine, he had, for his monks in the monastery, he had a book of essentials where the monks would learn like basic math, they would learn like basic facts about the world, just like the essentials. And he said, this is all the monks need to know. Anything beyond this, he said, is a sin. Why is that? What's wrong with becoming, a philosopher and reading all these philosophers and all these things? As they say, curiosity killed the cat. That if we read too much, if we're always curious, this is Saint Augustine, this is not me or Nectar of Devotion. If you read too much and all these things, there's every chance, again, it's association. There's a chance that I may become confused. Or even if I don't, if I'm reading all this all the time, my mind does not have time to think of Krishna. There's no time to think of God. And my mind is now busy, reading books on accounting or software engineering, or even if it's like religious philosophical books, my mind is busy in all these philosophical arguments. But none of these arguments will save me at the time of my death. As Shankaracharya said, Bhaja Govindam, Bhaja Govindam, Mudhamate, Samprapte Samanihite Kale, Nahi Nahi Rakshaka Karune. That he says, oh fool, this grammar, this Sanskrit grammar will not save you at the time of your death. Worship Govinda, worship Govinda, worship Govinda. So reading too many books is a sign of ambition, again, material ambition. And also we should not read even Srimad Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita, the books that we should read. Those are like the key books, but we should not read them professionally. So if we do so, that is an offense, like the professional reciters. Um, one should not be neglectful. On the other hand, one should not be neglectful in ordinary dealings. So we should not, be ambitious in material life, but on the other hand, we should not be neglectful of our ordinary duties. So nice, this so practical. So, the devotee will also say, please. Sometimes devotees, they come in this mood, like, I'm a devotee, just, it doesn't matter. Speed limit is not for me. I can do whatever I want. No, the devotee follows the conduct of this world. So, if someone, is saying thank you, they'll say you're welcome, like that. Yeah, they won't break the line. Like, just because we're a devotee doesn't mean that we can go and just, go to the bank and break the line, go in the front. We should not be neglectful in our ordinary dealings. Also, like another good example is the devotee, for example, will recycle. And you say, well, why recycling? Is that a principle of bhakti? It is actually. See, this 15th principle is saying we should not be neglectful of our day-to-day dealings. It's very responsible not to destroy Krishna's energies. And and destroy the earth. So this is part of ordinary dealings. Okay, I recycle my things. I, do what is necessary. One should not be under the spell of lamentation in loss or jubilation in gain. So, sometimes we can be too happy or we can be too sad. Too sad means we're always depressed. Lamentation, lamentation, lamentation. Of course, if something very difficult happens to us, we will lament, and that is natural. But too much lamentation, too much regretting is a sign of attachment. It's a sign of taking this material world too seriously. Like the famous poet Calderon, he said, life is a dream. Why is it like a dream? Because it has a beginning and an end. And life is a dream. And so, what gain could be so great and what loss could be so big? In our dream, we lose things, but then we don't eternally cry over them. We just don't cry and cry and cry, all these things. Why? Because we know we're going to lose it anyway. It's a dream, it's going to pass. In the same way, we know that life is temporary, everything's going to pass. So if we keep lamenting, then that's a sign of a lack of knowledge. Sometimes we lament as a way of um, self fulfillment or a way of self justification. We have to lament. It is necessary at times to its natural human behavior and human emotions. But if we keep lamenting, then that is actually that is it's a reverse form of feeding our ego, and it's also a form of a lack of knowledge. That, well, at the end of the day, we are in the material world, we're in the prison house, and the main thing is to get out of this prison house. If we simply lament in the prison house, we are not finding a solution, we're simply lamenting. On the other hand, we can be super happy when we get something. We get something and we're just like celebrating and celebrating and just so proud of it, and that celebration never ends. That is also part of a lack of knowledge, because we are celebrating for something that is temporary. Like children, you know they want a little like lollipop, and they will cry and cry and cry for the whole world will like crack in two pieces, and it's just like as though no one ever loved them, no one ever cared for them, and what they want is that little lollipop. And we adults, we know it's like, it's a lack of knowledge. They don't know that there's so much more to life than this little lollipop. But because that's their knowledge, that's what they do. In the same way as our situation as adults, that we feel so happy, for these small things, that and people, they just for years they will fixate on it. But that is not so important. One should not disrespect the demigods. So, on one hand, the offense against the holy name is to think the demigods to be equal to the Lord. But on the other hand, uh, we should not disrespect the demigods either. Why? Because they are representatives of the Lord. They are there by the Lord's order. So the devotee respects them. What does this mean? This is for us. Well, we don't worship the demigods, obviously, right? But for us, practically on a day-to-day basis, why is this principle very significant? Who can say?
Can I try, Prabhu?
Yes, please. Yes.
Um, Actually, if we see, even in Bhagavatam, we see that so many things in the material universe are controlled by the demigods. So, on a practical level, if we are respectful of the material universe and how the things are to be dealt, that's in one way not disrespecting the demigods. And the other way is the direct rituals that others perform, or I've noticed even in India, every ritual ends with whatever it can be Rudra Homam also. It'll end with Sarvam Sri Krishna Arpanamastu. So somewhere this philosophy of um, this thing that Lord is the ultimate controller is there in our demigod worship also. So even those who follow the demigod, that's why we've studied in the scriptures that those who follow the demigods also ultimately, if their whatever bhakti for that demigod is good, then it gets transformed into Hari Bhakti like that.
Yes, yes, yes. Very nice point. Thank you for that. So it's very true. If we respect the demigods, they are the devotees of the Lord, and they can lead us to Krishna. And we see this on many occasions. People who worship Lord Shiva in a devotional way, Devi in a devotional way, they become devotees. Especially Hanuman also. Of course, he's not a demigod; he's a devotee. But they don't worship Hanuman in a devotion like with Lord Ram. They just worship Hanumanji, but they become very nice devotees because Hanumanji leads them to Lord Ram. So that's a very nice point. Another way that this is very relevant to us is that one of the demigods is Bhumi, Mother Bhumi. And so for devotees, this can also have an environmental message that don't disrespect the earth. Don't disrespect Mother Earth. As a devotee, we should be very conscious. Are we using plastic unnecessarily? Are we, serving prasad in plastic plates? Are we destroying this earth? Because if we are, we're disrespecting Mother Earth, and that's against the principle of bhakti. Another example is like Lord Ganesh or Saraswati. Um, these are the goddess of learning. We can offer her respects. Children do before school starts. Lord Ganesh is often there even in ISKCON temples. He's there, at the entryway or like that. So we should not disrespect any of the demigods. We should not disrespect the rain, the sunlight, because these are these different demigods: the sun, the rain, the moon, the oceans. Ocean is Varuna. We should not pollute the oceans. So by polluting these different elements, to pollute the air is Vayu. By polluting these elements, we are disrespecting the demigods. Number 18, one should not give unnecessary trouble to any living entity. So this is a very important principle. This is also why the devotee is vegetarian, because the devotee does not give any unnecessary trouble to anyone. It's not just that devotee does not trouble other devotees, but even to a karmi who's coming to our home, and the devotee will not unnecessarily trouble anyone. One should carefully avoid the various offenses in chanting the holy name of the Lord or in worshipping the deity in the temple. So one has to avoid the offenses. Don't commit the offenses, which we know are the 10 offenses and the many offenses in worshipping the deity. So these offenses are all listed. I won't go through them, but we have to avoid all these offenses. One should be very intolerant toward the blasphemy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, or his devotees. So one should not tolerate the blasphemy of devotees. This is very key, very important principle. Um, Even if we don't blaspheme, but if we tolerate, this is kind of hard because the other person may also be a devotee who's blaspheming. So, but if we also tolerate the blasphemy of a devotee, then that is also a problem. Rupa Goswami defines that sadhu ninda or blasphemy of a devotee means, sadhu ninda actually means even if you harbor ill feeling towards a devotee, that is sadhu ninda. So even if we have just ill feelings towards another devotee, that is sadhu ninda. So we should not tolerate blasphemies of other devotees. And if another devotee has ill feeling towards another devotee, we should try to preach to that devotee and help them alleviate their ill feelings. So that is our duty. If a devotee, is speaking badly about another devotee,
The
and
Buddhi in Satish.
it's not correct, then we should try to help them. So even if we have ill feeling towards a devotee, even if that devotee is at fault, we will still we will still uh, make less advancement, because the devotee does not harbor any ill feeling. Of course, the devotee, again, all of these things, the devotee has to correct someone if necessary. The devotee has to do the right thing. The devotee has to, perform the devotional service, which may mean speaking their mind and, speaking their heart about what is disturbing them. But um, the general principle being that we should not be blasphemous. Okay, now we did the first 20, which are the most important. I went through them and I also explained them. Now the remaining ones, I'm just going to read them. And if there is something by chance that has to be explained, I will, but we'll go much faster now. One should decorate the body with tilak, which is a sign of the Vaishnavas. So this one we know we should do. Sometimes one may write the Hare Krishna mantra on the body. So you'll start noticing that how these principles are more kind of minor in nature. So, we can write the Hare Krishna mantra on our body. It's a nice thing to do. Rupa Goswami is suggesting this to us. One should accept flowers and garlands that have been offered to the deity and the spiritual master and put them on one's body. One should learn to dance before the deity. One should learn how to dance before the deity, not just do freestyle, but should learn how to dance. One should learn to bow down immediately upon seeing the deity or the spiritual master. As soon as one visits a temple of Lord Krishna, one must stand up. So, one should go and stand before the Lord, and then one should bow down. So here is bowing down, but you first go and see that you stand before the Lord, and then you bow down. When the deity is being born for a stroll in the street, a devotee should immediately follow the procession. Prabhupada actually talks about this in the chapter. You can read this, how in the villages the deity is taken outside, and the whole village then starts following the deity, and there's a big procession on the street, and someone is sweeping the floors, someone is doing something else. And we do this once a year. When? During Rath Yatra. A devotee must visit a Vishnu temple at least once or twice a day. At least once or twice a day. I mentioned to you how so many times, so many of these principles are related with the temple. So again, many of us may live only 10 minutes away from the temple. Of course, if we're far away, that's different. We live only 10, 15 minutes away, but then we only visit the temple on Sundays. Our process is not like that. We don't treat the temple like a church. Why? Because the Lord is there in the temple. So we should visit at least once a day. One must circumambulate the temple building at least 3 times. So we should circumambulate the temple. Generally, there's like an area to circumambulate within the temple, to circumambulate where the deity is. You circumambulate around them. But if not, we can circumambulate the entire temple. One must worship the deity in the temple according to the regulated principles. So not haphazardly, but according to the principles prescribed by the spiritual master and Krishna. One must render personal service to the deities, bathing the deities, offering arti to the deities. These are all very, very important. So regulated principles, personal service. One must sing for Krishna. One must perform Sankirtan. Sankirtan is our life and soul. Francis of Assisi said that there's no process that is more to better worship God than to take drums, flutes, and sticks, and to go and he said there's no process better than to take drums, flutes, and sticks, and praise the Lord on the streets. and sing the glories of the Lord on the streets. This is something that Francis of Assisi, a great Christian saint, has said. Similarly, our scriptures say that Sankirtan is the process, the Yuga Dharma for this age. And as we will see in the 5 most potent items, you think, well, why is this now number 33? Why isn't it the most in the most potent items? It'll come up again at the end. One must chant. Very simple. One must chant. One must offer prayers to the Lord. So offering prayers to Krishna is very nice. Srila Prabhupada mentions that we can memorize the prayers of Queen Kunti, the prayers of the great acharyas, and we can say those prayers to Krishna. We should say those prayers to Krishna. It's very interesting. Recently, we did a small, like a session on the prayers of Queen Kunti for new people. And it was part of a multi-series thing. And this family, they came back and they said, that one session on the prayers of Queen Kunti, it really touched our hearts. And since that time, we have never forgotten it. We keep talking about it. So we did this session pre-COVID. And then we met these people post-COVID, which in the US is now kind of post-COVID, like a year and a half later. And they said, this is the one thing we keep talking about. So Prabhupada said, right now, we're not advanced enough to know what exactly to pray to Krishna. Like I struggle myself. Like, what do I ask Krishna? How do I pray to him? So we can repeat the prayers of the acharyas. We should repeat those prayers. And these prayers will change our hearts. One must recite notable prayers. So I'm sorry, actually, this one was we should offer our own prayers. And this one is we should repeat the prayers of the acharyas. One should recite notable prayers. The prayers of the acharyas, the prayers in the Bhagavatam, we should recite those prayers. This is showing the prayers of Lord Brahma to Krishna. We can recite those prayers. One must taste Mahaprasadam. I think this is the easiest principle of the all 64. So we can, any principle you follow, you can go back home, back to Godhead, if you do it all the time and if you do it perfectly. So if we always, if we eat Mahaprasadam continuously and we, do it with full attention, we can go back home, back to Godhead. Well, because we cannot eat prasadam continuously, therefore we also have to chant Hare Krishna sometimes. But yes, this is the easiest principle to follow. One must taste Mahaprasad, and this devotee here seems quite happy to do that. One must drink Charnamrit. Equally easy is to take the Charnamrit from the Lord when that's offered to us. I know during COVID time, we've stopped this practice in most temples, but hopefully it will recontinue. Taking the Charnamrit is very, very powerful. Charnamrit means the water that has washed the feet of Krishna. Charnamrit means that water which has bathed the Lord. So that is very potent water. Also, the feet of the devotees. Drinking the water that has washed the feet of the devotees is also called Charnamrita. Charan means feet. Amrita means nectar. So this is literally the nectar of the feet, or the feet nectar. One must smell the incense and flowers offered to the deity. So one must smell the flowers and incense. This is part of the practice of bhakti. Also so easy to do. One must touch the lotus feet of the deity. So of course, not all of us can go on the altar and touch the feet of the deity, but we may have a deity at home, or we may touch the feet of the deity from far. So by touching the altar, we can touch the feet of the deity. One must see the deity with great devotion. So on this, I want to point out how Srila Prabhupada, he writes in his biography that as children, he would go to the temple and for many hours, he would observe the Lord. For many, many hours, he would just see the deity of the Lord. It is described actually. Prabhupada actually writes this, that he and his sister, what's the sister's name? I forget. Prabhupada says, yeah, Pishima. So he and his sister, they're both very close, and they're both very devotional. They would go to the Radha Govinda temple next to his home, very close to his home. They would go there and they would just see the Lord. They would just um, that's all. It's not like they would go there and do kirtan or go there and offer flowers. Just seeing the Lord is devotional service. We have to go and see the deity and absorb their beauty, take in their beauty. And not for 5 minutes or 20 minutes, but Srila Prabhupada says that he would just stand and observe the deity for many hours. So that is a principle of bhakti. One must offer arti at different times. So different times of the day we should offer arti to the Lord, morning, evening, afternoon. One must hear about the Lord and his pastimes from Srimad Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita, and similar books. Srila Prabhupada's spiritual master, Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, he told Srila Prabhupada, he said, your qualification is that you are a very good listener. Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, when he would speak, he was so erudite. Half the things he would say, people couldn't understand it. His language and his scholarship was so high. And Prabhupada says that he also could not understand it. But he said, but still I would just sit and listen. Because I knew that by listening only, I would understand. By listening only, I'd get purified. And Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur was very, very pleased by that. And therefore he said, because he has listened nicely, therefore he can speak nicely. So listening was his qualification. One must pray to the deity for his mercy. So praying to the deity specifically for mercy. So we already had this praying to the Lord, but we should pray for the deity for mercy. The deity is not stone. We should pray to the deity, please be merciful. This is, I think, Mirabai in front of her deity of Krishna. One should remember the deity. The deity is a member of the family. The deity is most beautiful. And actually, it's true, like not all of us are fortunate to live in a place where there's beautiful deities, but we go to Vrindavan, we see Radha Shyama Sundar, and they're so beautiful. They're so beautiful when one just remembers their beauty. One should meditate upon the deity. So this one's very similar. One should remember the deity, and then sitting in front of the deity, one should meditate upon the deity. So this is what Prabhupada used to do for many hours. Look at the deity, meditate upon the deity. One should render some voluntary service. So this is not someone asked us or we have to do it, but one goes there and thinks, let me do some service for the Lord. One should think of the Lord as one's friend. We should not think of the Lord as our enemy or the Lord as the mean God up there. But specifically, Rupa Goswami says we should think of Krishna as our friend. Krishna is our friend. Krishna is there to help us. Krishna is not there to punish us. Krishna wants to help us. We just have to accept his help. We have to accept his friendship. This is Sudama, Brahmana, and Krishna. Sudama was a friend of Krishna. He had no food. His family had no food. So he came to Krishna. Of course, he came to Krishna to meet Krishna, not for food. But he knew that Krishna could help him. Because why? Because Krishna is his dearmost friend. In the same way, we have any problem, we should call out to Krishna like our friend, because we know that Krishna will help us. One should offer everything to the Lord. By offering everything to Krishna, nobody is a loser. They are our gainer, the best gainer. So this is Prabhupada. He said in a lecture on 1972 that, but if we give Krishna, we'll never be a loser. Krishna will never punish us for giving our time to him or giving our resources to him. We can only be the gainer. So therefore, we should offer everything. One should offer everything to the Lord. One should offer a favorite article, such as food or a garment. So whatever our favorite dishes, we should offer that to the Lord. Whatever we really like, beautiful flowers, nice garments, we should offer that to Krishna. One should take all kinds of risks and perform all endeavors for Krishna's benefit. So again, the best example of this is Srila Prabhupada. On the Jaladuta, he had 2 heart attacks and he thought that he would not survive them. But he took all risks and performed all endeavors simply for Krishna. For Krishna, we can take risk. In every condition, one should be a surrendered soul. So not just that when we're at the temple, we're a surrendered soul, but at home, we're watching TV and we're the king. No, at home also, we are a surrendered soul. At the temple, we're a surrendered soul. At work, we're a surrendered soul. In every condition, we should be a surrendered soul, surrendered to Krishna wholeheartedly. One should pour water on the tulsi tree. It's said that millions of lifetimes of sinful activities are destroyed simply by watering the tulsi plant. And Srila Prabhupada told us to do this every day, every morning. One should regularly hear Srimad Bhagavatam and similar literature. Just see, Prabhupada here is giving class in Vrindavan Dham, and this is the audience. Packed full. Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya. Again, this one will be repeated at the end. It's one of the 5 most potent items of devotional service. One should live in a sacred place like Mathura, Vrindavan, or Dwarka. This is repeated so many times. It must be so important. This is like, I think, the 3rd time it's being repeated, and it's repeated again at the end. So take this seriously. It means good association. We can only practice good spiritual life with good association. Only possible. Association is so key. I mean, like, this is not just Rupa Goswami saying this. Even in our own life, in my own life, I can say that when I had good association, spiritual life was so easy. And the same thing became so difficult when there wasn't good association. The same thing. Or impossible. Association is the key. One should offer service to the Vaishnavas. One should serve the Vaishnavas. We can bathe the feet of the spiritual master. Vaishnav Seva and Nam Seva. These are the 2 most important things in our spiritual life. Vaishnav Seva, serving the Vaishnavas, and Nam Seva, serving the holy name. These are the 2 most important things. One should arrange one's devotional service according to one's means. So this is kind of goes back to the same thing about constructing beautiful temples, where according to one's means, one should serve the Lord. So if we have no money, we serve the Lord more simply. If one has more money, one should serve the Lord with more, because we should serve according to our means. In the month of Kartik, one should make arrangements for special services. So this is showing the importance of the Kartik month. This is why we chant Damodarastaka every single day in the month of Kartik. We do programs more, we increase our spiritual life. One should make special services, do special seva, chant extra during the month of Kartik. This is a principle of bhakti. Very, very powerful month. During Janmashtami, one should observe a special service. Janmashtami is a special day and it's coming up, and we're all making plans for Janmashtami. So Janmashtami is very, very nice. One should do whatever one does with great care and devotion for the deity. So whatever one does for the deity, one should do with great care and devotion. The deity is the Lord, so we should take care of the deity with great care. One should relish the pleasure of Bhagavatam reading amongst devotees and not amongst outsiders. So this is again that same principle that we are speaking of, that the intricacies of Bhagavatam, especially Krishna's Vrindavan pastimes, are not, you could say, accessible to everyone. By Srila Prabhupada's mercy, his compassion, mercy, people can access it, but we are preaching to everyone. But the relishing Shrimad Bhagavatam, that is done primarily amongst devotees. One should associate with the devotees who are considered more advanced. So this is association with devotees, especially those who are more advanced. Very important. So now we're doing the final five. So this is uh, the first one, worshiping the deity of the Lord. Second one, reading Srimad Bhagavatam in the association of devotees. Third one, associating with devotees. Fourth one should chant the holy name of the Lord. Again, simply repeated. It was, remember before it said one should chant. So one should chant the holy name of the Lord continuously. And the fifth one, final one should live, again, here we go, in the jurisdiction of Mathura and Vrindavan. So once again, the Lord is saying, Rupa Goswami is saying, we should try to live in Mathura and Vrindavan. So Dham. So these are the final five. What are they again? These are called the most potent. Worship the deity. So deity, Bhagavatam, devotees, the holy name, chanting the holy name, and live in Mathura, Dham. So here's a recap now. You've been hearing me a long time. Luckily, we'll get done in time. So the first 10 are the primary regulative principles, the do's. The second 10 are secondary regulative principles, the don'ts. And the remaining 44 are the other activities of sadhana bhakti. Now, of these 64, the first three are the most important: taking shelter of the Guru, acquiring knowledge after initiation, service to the Guru with respect. So these three: taking shelter, acquiring knowledge, and service to the Guru. And then the five most potent items. So most important, this is most important because without these three, you can't do any others. These are the most potent, meaning most powerful in advancing spiritual life in the process of bhakti, which is again deity, hearing Srimad Bhagavatam, associating with devotees, Sankirtan, or chanting the holy names, living in a holy place like Mathura. So a nice, easy way to remember these five, because five things are hard to remember. How do you remember it? Nam, Dham, so name, Dham, Nam, Dham, Deity, devotee, Bhagavatam. So you can remember like this: Nam, Dham, Deity, devotee, Bhagavatam. Nam, Dham, Deity, devotee, Bhagavatam. Nam, Dham, Deity, devotee, Bhagavatam. These are the five most important items of devotional service. And then these 44, you could say, so we have the 20 that were most important and the 44. Those 44 are specifically deal with the senses. So Rupa Goswami's aim is to engage the senses in the service of the Lord. Bhakti means engaging the senses in the service of the Lord. So in those 44 items, 11 items are engaging the whole body in the service of the Lord. 5 items are engaging the voice, 2 items the taste, 1 item the smell, 1 item the touch, 2 items the sight, 1 item the hearing, and 9 items are engaging the mind, like for example, remembering the deity. The Diya Seva, or Seva to things belonging to the Lord or the Lord himself, that Seva is 4 items. Mixed, meaning different senses combined, 3 items. And then the final 5 important items are repeated amongst these 44 items. Okay, and this is all. So I'll just let you write this down. And are there any questions? We have about 20 minutes to answer questions. Any comments, any realizations? This material was very long, it's very detailed, but it was very straightforward as far as I can understand. It's very straightforward. So if you have any comments or experiences or realizations regarding these 64 principles of bhakti, please feel free to share them now. Okay, yes. Pushpanjali Mataji.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, Dandavat Pranam, Jai Shri Prabhupada.
Hare
Thank you so much, Prabhuji. This is not directly in this chapter, but it was there in the Vaishnav etiquette, and I forgot to ask at that time.
Hmm.
One rule in worshipping the deity is that you should not cry in front of the deities. Is that correct understanding? And I didn't understand why, because sometimes it naturally happens. What do you do? Why is that an offense or like something not to be done?
Well, there can be certain reasons for it. Like, for example, there's a story of maybe it's Daruka or it's someone else, but one of the Lord's attendants, they were fanning the Lord. And as they were fanning the Lord, tears were coming down their eyes because the Lord was so beautiful, and just out of emotion, tears were coming down. And because the tears were coming down, the devotee could not fan nicely. That devotee could not fan nicely because he couldn't see where the Lord is. If tears are coming down, he could not do that. So he was feeling very annoyed with his tears, that because of these tears, I'm not able to serve the Lord nicely. So our crying is okay, but and actually Prabhupada in another place says that one should learn the habit, or one should be practiced in crying for the Lord, right? Prabhupada says this in the Krishna book, I think he says this, or maybe it was Bhagavad Gita, we covered it, where Prabhupada says that one should be, one should have the habit, one should be habituated to cry for the Lord. So crying is very nice. He says in another place that this Krishna consciousness process is teaching us how to cry for the Lord. Yeah, he says this. So crying for the Lord is very good, but in front of the deity itself, this means more, to my understanding, it means like on the altar. So in Rupa Goswami's time, people were serving their deity. So it wasn't so much like, it was like now it's less common for people to have deities, but before they had their deity. So to cry in front of the Lord means to cry on the altar. The Lord is there and we're crying in front of him rather than doing our service. Because that then crying is coming in the middle or is becoming a disturbance to our service. So even the tears of ecstasy, although they're out of ecstasy, the devotee does not want if it inhibits the devotee's service to Krishna. Why is that? Because they have such an intense desire to serve the Lord. So, yes, so that's what that means, to my understanding, that one should not cry in front of the deity. It means that, like for example, sometimes if someone dies, then like in India, it could be that people come to the temple and they cry in front of the deity in the temple room, and many people could be crying, all the relatives could be crying, but they're not crying for Krishna, but they're crying for the lost relative. And so it's this principle is saying is that the temple room should not be a lamentation hall. Like it should not become a place where people will come and cry for many hours or like that.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Thank you for explaining.
Thank you. Yeah, that's a good point. Brandy, do you have a comment on this one?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask, I won't share, but I had an experience when I was at the Krishna house involving this, and I had heard this same thing, and it made me very nervous. I didn't know if an offense, like a serious offense, had been committed. And so I asked the temple president, and I said, can you please explain this to me? And he told me that it's okay. He said it's something that happens all the time. If you are genuinely presenting your heart in front of the deity. But at the same time, the idea is to not make a show of yourself rather than the deities. And I definitely understood what he was saying. And in conjunction, he didn't give the point that you were saying, but I see how they both go too, even if you're not directly giving, artik or whatever, specific service. If you're sitting there and you're chanting, you're still not able to chant, amidst tears or whatever it may be. So I just wanted to add that.
Yes. This is actually very well said. Thank you for that comment. That the devotee there said it very nicely. He said that this statement of Rupa Goswami is in that context, that One should not make a show of oneself rather than the deity. Because even feelings of spiritual ecstasy, see, we are in a culture where there's very few devotees. But if you go to India, then there's, throngs, millions of people going into temples. So feelings of spiritual ecstasy can be sometimes exhibited cheaply. Like they'll come and start crying in front of the deity as though they are very, advanced souls. And sometimes it could be an advanced devotee, but sometimes it's also done as a show to attract the attention of others, that I'm a very great devotee. And of course, we're not crying for that reason, but that could become something. So Rupa Goswami is kind of saying this to avoid that situation. We don't cry in front of the deity. If we are actually feeling so much love for Krishna, we don't have to express it publicly. We can go to a quiet place and cry there, or like yeah. But at times in genuineness that happens. So yeah. Indu Mataji. Indu Lekha Karuna
Hare
Mataji.
Krishna,
Hare,
Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna. Yes, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. So, Prabhuji, my question is, it says specifically that we should hear the Srimad Bhagavatam. And so why is that more important than reading? So among the last five, it was mentioned you should hear the Srimad Bhagavatam.
Yes. Yes. So the thing is that we should hear. Prabhupada says that hearing has a special potency to it. Of course, we should also read. Prabhupada wants us to read. But reading is not a replacement for hearing. So let's say, for example, we're reading Bhagavatam all the time, or we're reading Bhagavatam 2 hours a day. That's not a replacement for the Bhagavatam class, because there is something special about hearing. The Lord does manifest himself when we hear Bhagavatam from the lips of a pure devotee or from the lips of a devotee. And reading is a form of hearing. It is a form of hearing. But still, Prabhupada never said that, he still had the Bhagavatam class, right? Prabhupada still established Bhagavatam class. He never told his disciples that, in place of Bhagavatam class, you can read Bhagavatam for 1 hour. No, he wanted us to hear. Because hearing is the Vedic process. It is a spiritual process given by Krishna. Krishna says in the Gita, right? We studied Tushyanti cha ramanti cha. When the devotees converse about me. So in reading, there's no conversation. In hearing and chanting, there's conversation. Tushyanti cha ramanti cha. When they converse about me, then I become manifest. In that hearing, in that temple room, in that place where the conversations about Krishna are going on, where there's hearing and chanting going on, Krishna becomes manifest. So there's a special mercy in hearing. That's the point.
Very wonderful explanation. Thank you so much, Prabhuji. Yes,
Thank you.
important to hear every day.
Yes. Thank you. Hare Krishna. Ambika Mataji.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you for the wonderful class. So I wanted to get your input on point number two, the important point, getting initiated by the spiritual master, because there are even in ISKCON or in other sampradayas, other places, people are very devoted. They know Krishna is the Lord, and even like just looking around, like devotees, they have been practicing Krishna consciousness. Maybe not all the regulative principles, but they kind of have understanding. They come to the temple, but they are hesitant about getting initiated. So we explain them, and especially within ISKCON, I think, we have this vows to follow, obviously, the 16 rounds every day that people probably sometimes, they can't make the time or devote the time for chanting, and they think they even though they understand it's a priority, they can't just follow it. So how do you go about and explain somebody that it's very important to get initiated? Because most of the time people think, oh, I'm a good person, I'm following all of this, I don't need to get initiated. So
Yes, I'm glad you asked this question, because it really highlights what Rupa Goswami is trying to say. Just 1 second, I have to bring my battery charger. I just realized the charger is going off.
Prabhu, is Devi Murti Mataji playing a kirtan?
Yes.
Oh, I love the kirtan that she's playing. I know it. I play it all the time.
Yes. It's a nice kirtan. It's a very nice thing. Yes. So just sorry about that. The uh, both things are good. It's good that they're very cautious in accepting vows that they intend to not accepting the vows unless they intend to follow them. So the cautiousness is good because we should not take vows that we cannot follow, right? And many times we find that people will take initiation or they're very eager for initiation, but they're not so eager to follow the principles of the initiation. So that cautiousness is a very good sign. On the other hand, like you're saying, we should be very enthusiastic to follow the vows and to take initiation, meaning that our enthusiasm should not be for the ceremony. That enthusiasm is often there. Our enthusiasm should be to follow the vows, and we should understand the importance of that for the rest, to do that for that. Now, we find that the sort of not having that enthusiasm is a sign of a lack of spiritual advancement, because that means that we're not so enthusiastic to accept Krishna, right? If we are enthusiastic to accept Krishna, then why will we not accept his pure devotee? Why will we not accept that step that Krishna wants us to accept? Just like if two people are truly in love, then why should they not be enthusiastic? Even though marriage is not love, marriage is not love. But if they are truly in love, why should they not be enthusiastic about getting married? If they're not enthusiastic about getting married, that means that they're not sure about their love, right? I mean, that's why. Otherwise, why wouldn't you? You say, okay, I'll get married 5 times. What does it matter? Because I'm fully convinced about this person. But people are not fully convinced about someone, therefore they don't get married. In the same way, if we're truly in love with Krishna, then why won't we accept him formally? Why will we not take initiation? And if we're not taking initiation, it means that, well, I'm either unsure if I can follow the principles, or I'm unsure if I want this process. In other words, there's still some doubt there. There's still some stopping in terms of accepting Krishna. So, people are coming and practicing over the course of many lifetimes. So we don't know where they're at. Someone might be actually taking initiation very quickly because they spent a lifetime in limbo. And another person, they are coming to Krishna consciousness and they're taking 10 years because they have not gone through that, period or something like that. So, but we should encourage everyone, because here Rupa Goswami is saying that the most important principle of bhakti is the spiritual master who is a pure devotee of Krishna. So really, the issue is not so much spiritual master. The issue is that the most important principle is taking shelter of a pure devotee of the Lord. And that pure devotee of the Lord becomes our spiritual master. So that is a universal principle. I mean, that is the principle of bhakti. If we love God, we'll love his dog. If we love someone, we'll love their dog. So if we love Krishna, we have to love the devotee. We have to take shelter of that pure devotee, of a pure devotee at least. So yeah.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Thank you. Hare Krishna. Vivek Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Are you able to hear me?
Yes, I can hear you softly. You're very
Yes,
soft.
okay. I'll bring my phone closer. So, Prabhuji, the question I had was the initial, the first few levels of bhakti that you explained. One is
You're really cutting out, Prabhu. You're really cutting out. I can't understand.
Prabhuji, can you hear me?
I can hear you better. Yes. Hare Krishna.
You can hear me, Prabhuji?
Hare Krishna.
Yes, Prabhuji. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you now
Uh,
clearly.
Sorry, Prabhuji. So Prabhuji, the question I had was, so in the initial, the first few limbs you mentioned about accepting or taking shelter of a guru. So the two questions I have is, you mentioned taking shelter means not really the, of course, formal initiation has to happen, but taking shelter in heart. But you also mentioned the point of disciple knowing it as well as the guru knowing it. So can you throw some light on how the guru actually knows that the disciple has taken shelter? And the
Hmm.
second question is, how do we know that um, so the mercy is flowing from guru, Sri Guru?
Hmm.
Those are the two questions, Prabhuji, if you can share some light.
Yes. Okay, nice. See, this is different in different situations. How the mercy of the guru comes, how the disciple knows. So that's why it is actually difficult to understand as a general principle. The general principle is that both the guru must be willing and the disciple must be eager, both. Then that means initiation. So, like the example that I gave my grandfather, I can take that as a specific example. So, my Guru Maharaj Gopal Krishna Goswami Maharaj, he was visiting his home for quite a few years. My grandfather was living in Allahabad, and he would come and visit him. And my grandfather, he would do a lot of seva for the Allahabad temple. He sponsored quite a few things. He was a businessman there, so he was connected with local officials, and he would do a lot of service. He was chanting, and my Guru Maharaj, he would come and he would encourage my grandfather that you should take initiation, you should progress in spiritual life. So he was encouraging him, he was telling him you should take this step, but my grandfather was not ready. There's always something like something stopping him, like anartha, something, it wasn't completely out. And then about 2 or 3 months before he passed away, he we could notice the change. He started glorifying him, and he just accepted him, like whatever barriers there were there, they just broke. The relationship naturally over time manifest. And then my Guru Maharaj, he didn't, he was visiting like once a year or twice a year, so he didn't come back in time, so to say. He was not visiting again before my grandfather actually passed away. But as um, uh, we could understand that he had sort of accepted him. So in that case, there was a relationship between the guru and disciple for quite some time, but the date of initiation was sort of after, uh, scheduled after he ended up passing away. So in such a situation, one can understand that, okay, the guru was accepting, the disciple was accepting. The formality of this initiation could not take place, but in the heart, both of them had accepted. So it's something like that. It's not overnight. It's like the spiritual master and disciple. It's a relationship, right? So they develop this relationship over time, over the years. Sometimes spiritual masters have many, many disciples, but still there's some relationship there. That's why the disciple is going there. For many devotees, it's dreams. The guru comes in their dream. For many devotees, it's through other disciples, but there is some relationship there. So that relationship has to be there. And if that relationship is firmly established, of disciple and spiritual master, then that is the point of initiation. Uh, that generally happens at the time of initiation, just like the relationship is solidified at the time of marriage. But Prabhupada's point is, when he says this, is that initiation happens in the heart. It is actually, it is not the fire itself, because Prabhupada initiated people by mail. He initiated people over the phone. They still have the fire sacrifice later on. They would join other initiations and do the fire sacrifice. But initiation takes place when the spiritual master and disciple make that connection. And that's something very personal. It's hard to say. And then the disciple can also feel the mercy of the Guru flowing. Like I knew my Guru Maharaj since childhood. I knew him since I was 2 years old. But I only accepted him in my heart when I was like 15 years old, 16 years old. Even though his mercy was there, I knew him, he knew me, but I only accepted him. I only could feel that mercy when I was 15 or 16. So so for different people it comes at different times. It is something very personal. The devotee knows this is my guru.
Thank you so much, Prabhuji. Prabhuji, a follow-up question is, so you also mentioned about asking questions like Guya Makyati Prachiti, like that. But in a situation like how we are in ISKCON, there are, like you mentioned, there are so many thousands of disciples taking shelter under a guru. So in that case, asking questions to spiritual mentors, is it equivalent to the limb that you mentioned? Does that count?
To a certain degree, if that spiritual master says that this person, is like, this person is representing me, that is true. But I firmly believe that the disciple, it can be very short. You see, that's the thing. Uh, but at some point, the disciple um, receives a direct instruction from the spiritual master and asks questions. Like in other words, Srila Prabhupada met his spiritual master only twice in his entire life. Imagine Srila Prabhupada and his spiritual master, such a deep, amazing relationship. But he came and he regularly heard his classes. At the end, there's always question period. Even if there's thousands of people there, he would ask questions. But he personally met him only twice in his life. But in those two meetings, the instruction was given. And Prabhupada, later on in his life, he was asking questions from his guru in dreams. He would tell us, I don't want to leave home. Do I have to leave home? And his spiritual master would say, yes, you have to leave. And said, no, I don't want to leave home. So, um, if the relationship is through the mentor under the guru, then we might as well take initiation with the mentor. Why are we not then accepting the mentor as the guru? No, we accepted the guru as a guru because that person is our guru. That person is our spiritual master. And so it doesn't matter even if we meet that person personally once in our lifetime, the day of initiation. But that meeting is very significant. And it's not unnatural either if it's less, because the best example is Srila Prabhupada himself. Prabhupada, for us, he's, everything, and he is, he's a Satyavesha avatar, we know that. But at that time, in the past time, Prabhupada was a householder. No one knew his greatness. And Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur Maharaj had hundreds of sannyasi disciples with him. So Srila Prabhupada would hardly ever get time to meet him or see him or go with him or do something with him. So he only met him twice personally. But in those two exchanges, his guru gave him everything that he needed. And generally speaking, the first instruction we receive from the guru is oftentimes the most significant one. I was listening to, we were actually in Indianapolis Temple, we were listening to a class by Hridayananda Maharaj, and he was saying how the first instruction he received from Srila Prabhupada ever was that he should preach to the intelligent class of people. And he said that how this instruction basically became his primary instruction, where now, Maharaj's focus is, to the academics, to the intellectuals, he tries to preach to them. So, so like this, we don't have to meet the guru many times, but the few times that we meet, we should ask a question, how should I serve you? That should be our question. And hopefully we will receive an instruction. If we don't, then that instruction will come through the heart, where the guru will give the instruction through the heart.
Thank you so much, Prabhuji, for elaborating.
Thank you. Yeah. And on this
Sorry, I cut you too.
Yeah, and on this point, hearing is very important. So even if we cannot meet the spiritual master, like Prabhupada's case, he would go and listen to Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur's classes again and again. So we can always hear the lectures of our guru, and that is making a very deep connection. Actually, through those classes we can make a very deep connection, and the rest may happen through the heart. Another example is like, some, even if our guru has only 10 disciples, right? Some disciples, they get initiated and the guru passes away like 3 months after their initiation. So that's a situation where you only have 10 disciples. I mean, we say, well, too many disciples, this is a problem, so gurus, but that disciple will have the same experience as someone who has taken initiation from a guru who has thousands of disciples, because the guru left after 3 months. But the thing is that the relationship is through the heart. That disciple, if they sincerely follow, will receive the instruction through the heart. But while the spiritual master is on the planet, we should aspire to associate with them, their vapu. So it is actually said we should associate with the physical form of the guru, meaning that we should try to ask questions, we should try to meet them. Like in the case of my spiritual master, he has thousands of disciples, but I practically see them that he still has time. Like any disciple who wants to come and directly ask him questions can, because most disciples don't come. Like, he has thousands of disciples, but most of the disciples, they're busy in their life. I mean, how often do they actually meet their guru? So at any one point, I've seen Jayapataka Maharaj, he has 70,000 disciples. But when he goes to a temple, the disciples are meeting him, asking him questions, he's answering questions. So the guru has this special quality that Krishna gives, that they can handle thousands of people. So yeah, and of course, I mean, that's still rare. Most gurus in ISKCON don't have so many disciples.
Thank you so much, Prabhuji. Very grateful. You provided so many viewpoints on this question. Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Prabhuji, my name is Prabhakar. Can you hear me?
Yes, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. I am, I came to visit the Brooklyn Temple in 1975, January. When my daughter was born, I took her, it's only 1 week, and I went to the puja in the evening, and disciples took my daughter and danced for half an hour. I was not even sure that she can survive that that orgy, But anyway, I came to this country in 70. I was already senior engineer, and I was working in Brooklyn, maybe a couple of blocks from the temple, as a building ships, largest ship America could build. So I was associated, but until I retired, and then came to this temple in Paramus. 2 years back, I have been attending all the programs almost every day, because it's in the same town where I lived for 40 years. So how does spiritual master will ever know me? I am the one of the oldest members. I don't have much time. Can you give me session how I can meet and impress a spiritual master, in your opinion?
Yes.
Thank you very much.
So Krishna says, very nice question. Krishna says that we should seek out a spiritual master.
Yes.
To seek out, it is our duty. So we have to find a bona fide spiritual master, not any guru. So in ISKCON, we are very fortunate that the community of sadhus already decides who is bona fide and who is not. So we have a list, so to say. And among that list, we should seek out a spiritual master. That's our duty. At the same time, if we are practicing very nicely and very sincerely, Krishna will also send the spiritual master to us. So we have to seek out, but also Krishna will help us. Krishna will send the spiritual master to us. One place I heard somewhere, maybe Prabhupada said or someone said, that if we are sincerely chanting, then the guru will come knocking on our door. So when we are ready. So that's why
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you so much. Hope to meet Guru soon.
Yes, you will. Now you have a desire, so it will come very soon.
Thank you.
Kalava.
Krishna Prabhu.
Oh, you're next. Okay. Varka, yes.
I had a query about deity worship at home.
Hmm.
I have just seen that in spite of getting initiation, few devotees they hesitate to bring the deities in
Mhm.
the form of vigraha. So they prefer to have photographs at home and they worship. So is that considered as a devotional service even after initiation? Means should they take the risk? Means for them it is almost like a risk to bring the vigraha. So because sometimes they may commit some offense or in working conditions if they are the lone
Right.
devotee in the house.
Yes.
So
The thing is that if a person is living close to a temple, actually the temple deities become their deities. So they can go and serve the temple deities. So if they're living close to a temple, it's not necessary to have deities, because then it's difficult because you know, who do you serve, your home deities or the temple deities, and like this. So then we should serve the temple deities and, like you said, have pictures at our home. But if we have a desire, or if we're living far away from the temple, we should have deities, Prabhupada said, because the deities will help the children become attached to Krishna, especially the children. But we can have Gornitai. Gornitai deities, they don't take offense, so there's no big risk. So we should have Gornitai deities at our home. We should worship them. It is one of the principles of bhakti. As we've read so many times, it's repeated: deity, 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 deity. So if we don't have temple deities, then we should have home deities, because our mind and senses will then be engaged in the service of the Lord. But among everything, chanting Hare Krishna and reading Bhagavatam is most important. So, so if someone is extremely busy, then maybe they should not have deities, because they have to make sure to chant and read. But generally speaking, families should have deities, because that helps the family remember that Krishna is the proprietor of my home. This is not my home, this is Krishna's home. So it's very nice to have deities.
very bold. Thank you, Prabhuji.
Thank you, Hare Krishna. Thank you. Kalavati Mataji.
Haribol Prabhu, thank you for the lovely class today. My question is around hearing. So hearing is the most potent when it's done in the association of devotees. So I wanted to understand that in this age of online classes, you know, is the potency really reduced when we hear an online class, especially one that's been pre-recorded? I've wondered about this. So I'm hoping you can clear this up.
my my personal realization on this, having been hearing over the whole year of COVID, and others can share their realization, is that hearing in the association of an advanced devotee is partly very potent, because by hearing, when we hear a devotee, it pleases the devotee, right? So like if I go to the class in person, let's say, and some great devotee is speaking, then the devotee feels happy. They feel pleased that we've come to hear them. Like Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur was pleased that Prabhupada was hearing them. So I did notice a difference personally, that hearing devotees online live was more potent than hearing just a YouTube recording. And the reason was because, or hearing them online live was as good as, not as good, but almost as good as sitting in front of them in person. But just hearing a YouTube recording is not the same as association. The reason, not the same as a full association, the reason being because when we're listening live, then the devotee on the other end is feeling pleased. They know that we're there, we're listening. We're also asking questions. They may be seeing us, we're seeing them on the screen. So it's the pleasure of the devotee that purifies our heart, because Krishna, when they're pleased and Krishna's pleased, and that whole process. Also, there's conversation, right? Tushyanti cha ramanti cha. Conversations going on, fine, they're going on over Zoom, but they're still going on. So hearing a recording is not the same thing, because it's a one-way transmission, right? I'm listening, but the devotee doesn't know that I'm listening, maybe, or maybe the spiritual master knows. You know, we offer service to the spiritual master. We offer them food, and they know, because Krishna tells them through some way or the other. But it's still not the presence, like the presence is less there. So the most important thing is the Vani, hearing from the spiritual master, and that is there regardless if it's a recording or we're in person also. But let's put it this way, we get more of the vapu if we're there live. And the closer we are, so if we're there in person, like not over Zoom, but actually in person, then it's even more vapu, right? There's more the vapu, meaning the physical form. So mercy of the spiritual master comes with two ways. One is the vani, the instruction, and the other is the person himself, the proximity of the association. So vani is there in any form, but the vapu is there the closer we are. So live is closer than recorded, and in person is closer than live.
Thank you so much for that. Thank you for clearing it up.
Because I actually felt it. Like one time I was on a Zoom call and with I think it was Giriraj Maharaj, and I was just feeling like he knew I was there. I knew he was there. Like, you know, it was a small group, maybe 20 people, and there's just so much mercy coming through that screen. And if I listened to his lecture, just YouTube recording, I gained so much, but it was something different listening live, you know, listening to him in person.
So we'll still gain something, but it'll just be a little less.
Well, we'll gain a lot. I mean, like, for example, we listen to recordings of Prabhupada, we gain so much. But as far as the association devotee part, right? So hearing is one thing, but then one principle is hearing. We gain that a lot, so much from it. Even Bhagavatam is hearing from Shukadeva Goswami when we read Bhagavatam. But then the association part, that part, I meant to say, that association, if it's live Zoom, it's more association than just hearing.
Thank you, Prabhu. Thank you very much.
Thank you. That's a nice point. Param Karuna Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, can you hear me, Prabhuji?
Yes, Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Very wonderful narration and description of all the 64 limbs. One question I have is regarding the 5 last limbs of devotional service.
Yes.
I was hearing a class one time, and I think it was related to this verse in Chaitanya Charitamrita, Madhya Leela, chapter 22, verse 128, which also has the same 5 limbs mentioned: Sadhu Sangha, Nama Kirtana, Bhagavat Shravana, Mathura Vas, Shri Murti Shraddhaya Sevana.
Nice.
So, Prabhuji, in that class I was hearing, it was by, I think, a very senior devotee. He was mentioning that there is a sequence, the sequence mentioned in Chaitanya Charitamrita: Sadhu Sangha, then Nama Kirtana, Bhagavat Shravana, then Mathura Vas, and finally Shri Murtira Shraddhaya Sevana. And I think it was either in a response to someone's question about Mathura Vas and deity worship, and how does it relate to Sadhu Sangha and hearing and chanting Nama Shravana and Nama Kirtana and Bhagavat Shravana. Whereas in the Nectar of Devotion, I see a slightly different sequence where serving deity with great devotion comes first, and then there is Bhagavat Shravan, and then associating with advanced devotees, chanting the holy name, and finally there is living in Mathura. So is there any significance in the sequence? Because it seems that in these 2 places, the sequence is a little different, or are these just the top 5 or the most potent forms?
Yes, Prabhu, and this is a very important point. I'm glad you raised it. I forgot about it. So I think in the Nectar Devotion, Srila Rupa Goswami repeats these principles many times in many different ways. So except for the initial sequence of the spiritual master, there's no specific sequence of these 5 items. I could be wrong, but I think that's the case, that there's no specific sequence of these 5 items. But in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, Madhya Leela, what was the chapter again?
22.128.
128. Okay, I'm just putting this for the group. In there, the sequence is, like you're saying, it's very significant. And for these 5 most potent items, there is a sequence to them. and the first one is sadhu sangha, which is most important. Everything starts, bhakti begins. We find out about the holy name because of the association of the devotees. And then the next one is the holy name. So let's say we say, I can't do 5, I can only do 2. Then we have to choose those 2. We have to choose sadhu sangha and holy name. And then the third one is Bhagavatam. Is that correct?
Yes.
The hearing Srimad Bhagavatam is the third most important. Then the fourth most important is the living in a holy place. And the fifth one is worshiping the deity. So again, the deity worship in this age is very important. Prabhupada again emphasizes it, but still relative to hearing, chanting, and association, it is less important. So deity worship is the last one. So there is an order to these 5. Even amongst these 5, which is most important? So yeah, Prabhu, I think, thank you for reminding us. This is in Chaitanya Charitamrita, these 5 potent items. And yeah, in the Nectar of Devotion, I don't think they're in any specific order.
Thanks, Prabhu. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Prabhu. Thank you, everyone, for attending the class. I think we're right on time. It's good time to end at this time. So I will send you the homework very soon for this week. And next week, we will continue as normal. Thank you very much.
Quick question. So we seem to have covered like a lot of chapters, but is it chapter 6 only that we have covered today, or have we covered further?
Actually, we covered 6 and 7. So I didn't cover all the details of 7. So from what I recall, it's 6 and 7. I'll give you homework for 6 and 7. And then next time I'll do chapter 8, but I'll cover a few points from chapter 7 also. So yeah.
Thanks. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you, Prabhu. Hare
Prabhuji. Hare
Krishna.
Krishna.